It is usually said that a good practice in conference talks, so as to have a successful presentation, is to start with a question relevant to the attendees that will slowly bring you to the topic of the presentation. So here we are today in a conference for software quality, and I decided to start with a totally relevant question with software quality. How many of you do you like Lord of the Rings? Raise one hand if you like it. Raise both hands if you're a true fan of it. Nice. Now, regardless if you like it or not, I hope that you will all agree that it is very interesting where real-life scenarios tend to resemble these fairy tales, and when you have lessons learned, morale to keep, when these are from actual cases, from actual scenarios, and not from just fairy tales. So, my name is Sakis, and I'm here today with you to tell you a story of this kind. It is a story of a test team, an unexpected journey from Waterfall to Agile, and how they did a few steps back so as to find their middle ground, their own Middle Earth, in their proprietary test shire. It is the story of how independent testing enforcement diminished, close to become obsolete, but then rose up again, finding a new balance within a software house. It is a story of how a team of testers were lost in Agile translation, but they found DAD, not their dad, their father, DAD, Disciplined Agile Delivery that is, and a new refined identity for them as testers. And it is my personal story also, how I almost lost my job as a test manager, having my role becoming extinguished in a sense. But it turned out to have every test manager's dream coming true, that is having actual insight of what we are expecting to receive in testing and their quality, and in a sense to know what we need to test even before having a delivery to test. Last but probably foremost, it is an interesting experience how a software house decided to answer the mother of questions when it comes to organizing functions in a corporation. Should functions work united or decoupled? Which is pretty much the same question, the same dilemma, only seen from a methodological perspective if we question Agile or Waterfall. So I keep saying that this is a story. Is it an actual story? Well, most things happened as you are going to hear them. Some things could have happened as you will hear them, regardless if they did or not. It is, as they say in Hollywood, based on a true story. A grand deviation is that in real life, we never just live happily ever after. There are always changes, there are always challenges, and it is not just an end in a fairy tale. And also, allow me a disclaimer so as to be sure that I will get a paycheck at the end of the month. This story has nothing to do with my current employer. So, how the stories are starting. Once upon a time, there was a software house following the old-fashioned methodology of Waterfall. There was also a test team within the software house, and all they were following, the whole development process was following the V model. Analysis, development, and testing were three different functions staffed from three different groups of people. We were following a pretty sequential process where the output of the one function was the input from the next, and it was pretty much like a production line process. This software house was generally well reputed as it was delivering, in most of the cases, on time and with quality. Even though this old-fashioned bureaucratic way of working didn't leave any flexibility to adapt, to cope up with changes, scope changes, or any changes in general. Well-structured projects where everything was pretty much known from the very beginning, were treated very well. Changes was pretty much a synonym to nightmares. If you get into a project where things were changing, this software house, the only thing that they knew was that you should just leave this project behind. You should just can it as soon as possible and have the less damages as possible. So in this software house, everything was well documented, very robust processes, very bureaucratic, and this was a scenario, a setup that was pretty close to what we see in national administration, in public sector. So most of the contracts in this software house were national administration contracts, and this software house was really happy having this large framework contracts, even though the bureaucratic way of work didn't leave much benefit, much money, because the cost was really high. So this is pretty much the setup, the scenery of a story, and as in every story, we have an unexpected change. One day, there was an announcement, a big announcement for an organizational transformation, which was bringing a non-managed change with uncalculated risks. The transformation that we were looking at, that I will call the ring in our case, was agile processes. Who was the bearer of the transformation, who had the decision, let's say, making, is of little interest. What is more interesting in this case is that this came as an announcement, and everyone was feeling that, okay, if we follow Agile, we are going to have the flexibility that we are so much missing. We are going to be able to adapt in changes. Now we cannot, so we should just follow Agile processes, as everyone is doing these days. There was not much discussion. Even the bearer of the change couldn't understand that these new processes were powerful enough to help us, but powerful enough to kill us too. The consequences was that from a moment to the next, from a day to the next, everything that we were doing up to this point was treated as cursed. Waterfall, our previous processes, transformed suddenly to the scapegoat of all evils. Some within the organization had reservations about this change, and I personally, as a test manager, was fighting back this change as much as I could. But it seems that for a decision already taken, coming from with a top-down approach, when you're fighting back, it's like fighting the vision and mission, the new vision and mission of a company. So I was pretty much in a battle already lost. I even once got an answer when I expressed my reservations that, okay, don't worry, you won't get disappeared. You could probably work as a Scrum Master. So at the point where no return was visible, an unforeseen ally appeared in this change. It seems that initially we hadn't considered as a stakeholder to hold this, to this whole transformation endeavor. It wasn't conceived as a stakeholder, the set of our dear and beloved customers. But it turned out that they had a considerable say in this whole story. It seems that over the years we choose our customers, and customers choose us not only for what we deliver, but also for how we deliver it. It seems that how an organization works, what are the ethics and the overall approach of an organization is almost equally important with the outcome of our work, with our deliverables. So, just like in every partnership, it seems that we prefer to deal with the ones that look and feel like us. Even if when things are not going that well, we consider them as being golems in a partnership. So apparently, our customers were following pretty much the same processes with us, so obviously they were very skeptical about this forthcoming change. Only then, this software house reconsidered the decision, and it was now envisioned not as an order to follow, but as an idea where we needed to elaborate more to see what we could do best. So we were trying not to follow Agile, whatever that means, but to create a proprietary solution for our needs based on some assumptions. So the assumption was that, okay, we need to change. We need to follow something more Agile-like because it seems that it provides better results, at least in the development level. But any imposed change should not affect what we are doing now and how we are working. Since the customer has created over the years some interfaces with us and they are used to work in the way that we do, regardless if it is old-fashioned or not, we should try to leave this part intact and in a sense make all this change transparent to our ongoing business. So considering these restrictions and after several talks, meetings, agreements and disagreements of the Greek kind which are not that good, it seems that we had a consensus about some things that we should do. First thing is that, as initially said, okay, we should include some agility in our processes, and we decided to follow Scrum in the development level. Still, we saw that the Agile methodology, and in this specific case Scrum, didn't provide a solid framework for an end-to-end delivery scenario. So apart from following Scrum, we had the feeling that we should do something more so as to safeguard our delivery process over the customers. What we created was a hybrid Agile schema where Scrum was selected, but it was encapsulated as a development process from a service process where we have an initiation phase and a delivery transition, if you like, phase, which were pretty much the adapters towards the customer sides. These adapters gave us the flexibility to be able to work in an Agile manner, even if the customer wasn't really willing to follow Agile, and also gave us the possibility, the capability to scale Agile and having more than one Scrum teams working for the same project in parallel. This is a schematic of how it looked like. You see the core being the dev process with several Scrum teams, which is encapsulated of an overall service delivery process with an initiation phase and transition phase, where these phases are undertaking the interface with customers. Only after several months and considerable effort, we realized that all this innovative idea was pretty much what Ambler Scott described back in 2012 as discipline, agile, delivery, where any methodology, any agile methodology can be encapsulated with an inception phase and a transition phase so as to be able to achieve what we actually had as an issue, a robust way to deliver end-to-end. So yes, in this case, we pretty much reinvented the wheel. You see even as a schematic that this is more sophisticated probably, but pretty much what you saw previously. We have a construction phase with iterations, with any agile methodology that can be followed there, which is encapsulated from an inception and a transition phase. So pretty much what we thought that we invented. So what all these mean for testing? Testing in Waterfall means that we have a different team, a functional team dedicated to testing, and that testing is a separate phase in an overall project. Testing in Agile is completely different. It's exactly the opposite. It's not a team, it's an activity, a continuous activity occurring within the whole life cycle and undertaken by everyone. And yeah, governed by processes that all should follow, not just by a specific team. So what was the future of a test team in this hybrid model? How can someone work in both cases, in both scenarios? Well, what we actually saw was that this hybrid model was enforcing the test team in a sense that now we have the need to follow both scenarios to be able to deliver our services in both cases. So pretty much we had a functional team who was, let's say, providing within the organization not only resources but also tools, know-how, and everything that was needed so as for everyone to be able to follow quality assurance processes. If we go back to the previous schematic of how the overall organization was working, you can see the test team being there. So pretty much it's a glue, let's say, between the agile development processes and the overall service delivery process. If we zoom in this part, you will see that we have testers working within the Scrum teams, and we do have an independent test team still being waterfallish in a sense, but all these are members of the same one functional test team. This means that we do have the flexibility to move testers from the one part to the other part, and we actually do keep this idea so as to be sure that we do not have testers being completely absorbed within the Scrum teams, and that they still get the notion of another phase of an end-to-end of a user perspective, and vice versa. So what was the added value of all this endeavor, of all these changes? We achieved to have a smoother internal transition from dev to test, which was a request initially. We had for sure less risks because that way we managed to shift left our overall quality assurance processes. We actually had testers being involved in what is going to be delivered even from the very early stages. And probably the best was that we had the greater consensus about what are the testing practices that we are following and what is the need in terms of quality assurance. So the throwing over the fence approach was now left behind. And it seems that we have added value not only for the projects that we are implementing, but explicitly also to the test team, because our life was much easier having some visibility from the earlier stages of what is going to be delivered to the independent part of the testing. We have better technical awareness, so we started not to leave behind the black box, let's say, thinking and approach, and now we're understanding not only what is going to be delivered, but how is implemented, what are the technical constraints that potentially we may have. And we managed to have a greater variety of testing position from the old classic black box end-to-end desk tester to more technical, let's say, flavors of dealing with earlier stages of testing within a Scrum team. So, is that it? Is it a happy ending? Not really. As said initially, in reality, things are constantly moving, reshaping, changing, and we do have more challenges, probably. Hiccups that we do have up to now and that we have identified that we should somehow solve. Apparently, we as human beings resist the idea of change. Getting a desk tester, a black box tester who was working with this notion of testing for 20 years or something is really difficult to make him understand that it is better to try to have an idea about how things that he's going to test are created. Another issue was that the Scrum teams, in their cases where they had a very smooth cooperation with the testers within the Scrum team, they wanted to keep their tester forever. So they didn't like the idea that they may have a tester for a few sprints, but afterwards they may change who was doing testing within the Scrum team. And the overall organization that now is somehow like a matrix one has created some difficulties in terms of reporting, because now, for example, a tester reports to Scrum Master, again, remains the reporting mechanism towards the test manager. So can we consider that that was a successful, let's say, trip, that was a successful change? Based on the outcome, as the sales guys at least measure it, based on money, it is somehow a success. But from an engineering perspective, from my personal perspective, what is even more important are the lessons learned, what we learned out of this whole journey. We learned that we should go with the flow, we should see what are the new trends in the industry, we should try to check what is out there, but we should be, at the same time, be very cautious about the trends. Generally, every new big thing, every new process, every new methodology, every new buzzword follows this cycle of born, hyped, used, misused, fought, and burned. And only after that, only after the dust settles down, we can actually evaluate if there is any true value within it. So, for example, we do have Scrum out in the field for 2 decades or even more. Still, regardless if they admit it or not, there are organizations that do not follow Agile processes, that follow some kind of a waterfall or a mixed procedure. There should be a reason for that. Another very important lesson that we learned is that do not reinvent the wheel. Before you start a journey, see if someone else has done it before you. See if there is anything that you can find ready. Still, there is no off-the-shelf product. There is nothing broadcasted for everyone that can solve your own unique issues and can deal with your own unique specificities. We cannot take Scrum methodology, this magic 17 pages, and say that this is the golden pill and the solution for every issue. No. Every problem is unique, so every problem needs a unique solution. There is seldom the right answer is black or white. When saying Agile or something else, united or decoupled, it's like asking black or white. Well, it's only one black and only one white, while we have innumerous different shades in between. Usually our answer is a shade of gray. And a byproduct of this whole process, of this whole endeavor, which also probably was, for me, the most important lesson that we learned, is that enforcement, a decision, comes in a top-down direction, apparently, in every organization. But the actual commitment is only gained in a bottom-up approach, in a bottom-up engagement. It's pretty much like in a conference talk. Someone can be here and say something valuable or saying nonsense. If the speaker doesn't have the ability to make a connection with the audience, then you will get back nothing. So engagement is a key factor for every change, for everything new to learn. And the end of the story, did we live happily ever after? No, but as testers, we all continue find critical bugs back then, now, and ever. Thank you very much.
And we have a couple of questions. I'm going to read that on the top. Why must be at the beginning and the...
Oops, changed.
Yeah.
That was Agile.
I need to highlight it, I think. So, does the test team perform testing or just consult support testers in the Scrum teams?
Both. It's like being an external organization in the overall software house. So when we need just to provide some consultancy, we do provide that. When we need to provide testers, we do provide testers. We provide, it's like having a full list of services that start from answering a question how we use Jira up to give me 3 testers for 7 months and everything else in between.
Okay, next question. What were the difference between activities and the scope of testers in Scrum teams and in test teams? Did you have issues with different competence need? Long question. You have it here also.
Okay.
Also.
What were the difference between activities and test scope of testers and in test team?
So the scope of testers who work in a Scrum team versus the ones outside.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it issues. It is not politically correct term to use. I would say challenges. The thing is that this challenge was at the same time what provided with more opportunities so as to have different flavorings of test work and be able to fit in more resources in these different flavors. So yeah, it is a challenge. At the same time, it is one of the pros of the solution.
Yeah, okay. Let's see the next question. Would you go back to Waterfall with the same project? If yes, why or why not?
Well, yeah. No, I should say no, I guess. But it's not that clear. The thing is that if the heart of your organization works in an agile manner by following a disciplined agile delivery methodology or safe scaled agile flavor, you can deliver waterfall if the customer wants that. The opposite, it's not true. If you work waterfall, you cannot deliver in a customer who expects agile. So apparently, the agile methodologies are more agile. Okay,
last 2 questions. Why must be the beginning and end waterfall and not Kanban?
Probably it has to do again with the customer. As you imagine, we are talking about an organization who is delivering projects, not products. So how you interface with the customer is a very important factor on how you set up the overall project. If a customer is not willing to follow any agile methodology, whatever that is, could be Kanban, then apparently somehow you should provide services, you should interact with the customer as they expect. So if for any reason whatsoever they have requirements from the beginning that they cannot change and they expect to see documentation in between but not an MVP, then you should somehow adapt to this process, and believe it or not, there are still customers out there that they expect this kind of approach.
Yeah, and a final question, then we let the people leave. So from a test manager, you became a product owner, right?
No. I became a speaker in conferences, and apart from that, I am now a project manager, managing changes within the organization that I work. The test manager as a role remained as a test manager who had, though, different, let's say, responsibilities and a different authority. Still, there is a need to keep a centralized approach of testing as being a center of excellence. So now the test manager is the, let's say, overall responsible of the center of excellence for quality assurance.